I begin by speaking of the adulation of a 12-year-old boy so excited about a new neighbor who had moved next door that this 7th grader brought his young friends by to hang out on the street to see if they could catch a glimpse of America's premier baseball writer. I can also speak of 2 young men now starting their careers in baseball as lowly front office personnel, having the opportunity to return to the work of their hometown team, but to discover there's a no tampering rule. You just can't pick up and move from San Diego to Boston because you want to. The rules just didn't allow for that. And they thought indentured servitude had been eliminated in 1865. Their dreams were being crushed in front of their eyes. And yet the adulation of a 12-year-old and later the admiration of 2 29-year-olds, Theo Epstein and Sam Kennedy, had their lives turned around due to the magic of the pen. Peter Gammons, through the skillful presentation of facts in a baseball column, was able to allow these 2 young men a 24-hour window in which to negotiate a contract with the Boston Red Sox and be released from baseball bondage, bringing them indeed to their hometown team. And as they say, the rest is history. But their adulation and joy was brought to despair when their hero and mentor was struck by a life-threatening aneurysm in 2006. And those boys quickly learned that friendship and guidance shown by their mentor was now deeply rooted in a mutual love. And so it is for those of us who care for us, who give of themselves not asking for anything in return, but we are called to go and to do likewise. Our honoree today, raised in a family and schooled, grounded in the Judeo-Christian ethics of fairness, justice, and love. Such ethics were imbued in his both personal and professional life. Baseball writer, yes. Awards too numerous to recount here. Writing and commenting on the sport. But here is a person, and it's not as well known, whose life has mentored and guided numerous individuals on and off the field of play, regardless of their status in life, to become better, indeed superior persons than they even imagined that they could become. Baseball players, baseball executives, all found their indebtedness to Peter Gammons' love, care, interest, and concern, and their becoming better persons, indeed becoming successful in life. The Peter Gammons Foundation, to be named later scholarship, now supporting dozens of Boston high school graduates with financial assistance as they pursue higher education, is the example of how his love of music and the game of baseball can help someone achieve a better life. And all this and more from one who looked beyond the 6th game, saw the opportunity for a sport coming into its own in the latter part of the 20th century and lifting the sights and lives of those who love the game and making us all the better for it. Finally, I'm reminded of a quote from Booker T. Washington, American educator, writer, orator, scholar, and advisor to presidents, who said, The measure of success is not in the number of achievements, but the number of obstacles overcome and the number of people you have helped along the way. And so for this reason, I'm honored to present to you today the one who has been an educator, a writer, an orator, an advisor to many in high places, a Hall of Famer, but also a Hall of Fame person, to stand before you to introduce the latest winner of the Martin William Souders Memorial Award, my baseball mentor and dear friend, Peter Gammons.
I once had a teacher at Groton who guaranteed me in the 10th grade that I would be a career underachiever. So I didn't like chemistry, so he didn't like me. But it's, when I was informed of this and got the list of all the people that have been so honored, like George Herbert Walker Bush and Leverett Saltonstall, and Dr. Barry Wood, and Dr. John Knowles. I thought, well, what in the world are they doing getting hold of me and honoring me? And I'm extremely humbled by it. I guess I'm sort of such a product of NEPSAC, New England schools. I'm a faculty brat. And so I grew up realizing how hard everybody works, watching my father carrying books of Bible, of hymnals from the schoolhouse at Groton School over to the chapel, and all the hours he spent, and all the time that people gave things to me, and all that the school gave me in terms of what are the values that you should leave Groton with. And my father used to remind me as a child of one of Groton's original mottos, which is the difference between what you intend to be and what you intend to seem. And I could still remember sitting in the schoolhouse at Groton, probably sometimes in detention, but looking up, and the motto to serve is perfect freedom was something that I think I've taken all my life, and I've realized how important that is. And whether it is in terms, Tom was very kind about people I've tried to help and mentor, and it's what you get and you take from great private school education and the culture that those schools have. I have friends, from countless schools, whether it's Andover, Mount Herman, wherever. Avon Old Farms, of course. And I think what we all have agreed upon is that the Secretary of Education, and hopefully the athletics that go with it, are all part of a navigation system that is installed in us for the rest of our lives. And it certainly was for me. And it doesn't really leave. Peter McGowan went to Groton. He was 3 years ahead of me, but he and I shared something, a great love of baseball. He of the Giants, I of the Red Sox, growing up in the middle of Massachusetts. When he was at Stanford and I was still at Groton, we had what was the equivalent of a rotisserie game that we played by mail, which obviously statistics changed by the time the mail got delivered. Of course, he also, that era of the Giants, they had Mays, Cepeda, McCovey, Marichal. I had Gary Geiger in the Red Sox, so that was, I didn't win many of those contests. And in 2000, when Peter, as owner of the San Francisco Giants, built the greatest ballpark I think ever constructed, looking out at the San Francisco Bay Bridge or the bay, and I went out there for the first week, and he said to, well, you're missing something. You have one thing after we had a long tour, and then we're watching games, and he said, you haven't noticed something. And I said, well, I thought you'd show me everything in this park. He said, no, there's a little faux copper like run before some seats, and when you see home runs going to McCovey Cove, they go over those seats, but that's a little faux copper. And what it was the same as some copper that led to the roof at Hundred House at Groton School, where we all played stickball and roof ball. And he said, you know, it never leaves you. Roof ball never leaves you at Groton, from Groton School. That's where we shaped our lives. And this from a major league owner to someone who was a journalist, part-time talking head on television, part-time ink-state and wretch. But it is what I believe in. I believe so strongly in what the New England private schools mean to us all. I had the great fortune, I had a teacher, and he ended up being headmaster for a while, but named Paul W. Wright, since all teachers were identified by their initials. And coming out of a small public school system into Groton School, where a lot of the people had come from private schools leading to Groton, my ability to deal with math was, it really did seem hopeless. And he was a math teacher, and so he sat me down he said, I'd like to talk to you for a couple of hours. And he said, I just want to tell you, you're really good at baseball statistics. I could give you any number of how many bats, how many hits, you know exactly what the batting average and the slugging percentages would be. And I said, well, yeah, but that's different. I've been doing that since I was 5 years old. And he said, well, that's the whole point. It's pragmatic. So there's no difference in math. You'll find when you take your college boards in math, it's still practical math. Batting averages and then run averages are just part of your education. So you should be really good at math. As it turned out, I did pretty well on the boards. I just never wanted to have to take another math course in my life. But the life that you're given, a few years ago, my advisor, baseball and hockey coach, Judy O'Brien, passed away, and there was a memorial service at Groton School for him, and two of my very close friends from my class, Oakley Brooks and Warren Cook, were among the pallbearers, and we were just talking afterwards about just things about Junie and how remarkable it was that we could all remember on the Sunday afternoon in February, when we were in 1960, that we were invited over to Junie and Muffet O'Brien's house, and we watched the 1960 United States-Russia hockey game, still the greatest win, I believe, in American hockey history. And we could all remember exactly what Muffet O'Brien served us, clam chowder and whatever. And we all say, it never really, again, it never leaves you. And it was also great because Billy Clary, who won this award, was of course, scored the first goal in that game, and 3 years later was coaching all three of us, because he came to Groton to coach before he ended up at Harvard. And I see this, the other day I was working on a story about two young guys. One was the Yankee minor league player of the year, the other was the Mets minor league player of the year, and they'll both be pitching in the major leagues this year. But one of them, Justin Dunn, is from kind of a rough neighborhood on Long Island, and he was telling me because I do know somebody involved. He was telling me about how his father decided that he wanted to try to get him away from where he grew up and get him into a private school. And because he's a minority, maybe he would have a chance to get a scholarship. And he went to a tryout for different prep schools, and places like Salisbury, which is a very well-known baseball program. I said this kid Justin Dunn was too small. Basically, only one person, Jeff Trundy, at the gunnery school, said, I love his athleticism, I love his energy. So Justin reported when he got in September to the gunnery at 5'5" and 103 pounds. I don't think anybody ever would think that he'd be in the Mets rotation at the end of this year, but he was. And in talking to him the other day, he talked about how Jeff Trundy changed his entire life. He said, the gunneries, there's not a lot to do up there in the northern part of Connecticut. He said, but you know what? I never would have been able to make it academically. I never would have been able to go to Boston College. I never would be able to have the grade point average that I had. I never would be where I am now if it weren't for one man's belief in me and my prep school advisor and baseball coach. And it really struck me this is a story a lot of places. I mean, there was a kid from Milton Academy who was a high draft choice a year ago, Matt Tabor, who his summer coach got him from, I believe he's from Forge Village or Westford, to go to Milton Academy, and he's absolutely prospering in the Arizona farm system. But it's those opportunities. Another great friend of mine, and Juan Yevis, who has been Major League pitching coach with the White Sox, and the Marlins and the Red Sox, was on a scholarship from Puerto Rico to Avon Old Farms, where he was a great athlete. He won New England cross-country championship. He was high school All-American basketball player, and he also was the highest bonus boy ever before the draft. And I mean, this is a guy that was given a break to be able to go to Avon Old Farms. And when it came to his senior year, if he could have afforded not to sign, but he came from a very poor family and had to sign. But if he hadn't, the four colleges he got into were Stanford, North Carolina, Duke, and Amherst. I've never quite figured out how Amherst got into that, but it's still amazing. And I think so much of what I look back on over my career and working for newspapers and 30 years in television and writing for magazines is all the structure they got going, being able to be forced to take, which I loved actually, a current events course where we were responsible for what was in the New York Times, Sunday New York Times, in Time, in the New Republic, and being educated in journalism without it being called journalism. And I think of all the things that all the different teachers, there was one that is still a special friend of mine, Jay Condleton, who was a football coach, basketball coach at Groton. And because of one of my classmates, Tony Barclay, and I were political junkies by the time we were seniors at Groton, he taught 4 courses in history. He was a football coach, and every Sunday after the football, he would take us to some place to be able to see how the political process works. We would go to Forge Village, we would go to Acton, we would go to different places, so we could see small groups in working at the grassroots of politics and see how actually America is decided. And it's pretty hard to ever forget that, considering the time that he gave to us, I say, every Sunday, and where we all are now. Tony went on to run a major company raising independent funds for third world nations. And well, I've been doing what I've been doing, but it was terribly important, and that's what some of us never. I'm 73. I never have forgotten the white station wagon that Jay Cumberland drove us around to all these small towns in. So it's extremely important to me. This award is, it would be great for my father, who spent 40 years in education. It would be great for a lot of other people, but to be able to be given that navigation system and to understand what leadership really is, what authenticity means, and what empathy really surrounds us with is terribly important, and I thank you very much.